Here is California's GOP Chairman Ron Nehring joining us from Washington, D.C. Mr. Nehring, welcome to the program. It's very good to see you, sir.
Great to be on. Thank you.
Let's see what first of all, you think about the Brown budget cuts. $12 billion worth affecting welfare, education, etc., or medical care, all the way down the line. What's your initial response to these, I'm calling them draconian cuts?
Well, my response to it is that this budget plan is all pain and no gain. And the reason for that is that this contains a series of one-time cuts, but it completely lacks fundamental reform of what's driving California costs of government through the roof. There's no comprehensive reform of the state's pension system, which is completely unsustainable. There is no reform of our education system collective bargaining. 42% of our state budget is in education. The overwhelming majority of that is spent on labor. There's no reform of the collective bargaining process whatsoever. So what you're seeing here is a series of one-time cuts and one-time tax increases, but without the fundamental reform of the process that is causing this kind of Groundhog Day effect where year after year after year we have the same problem.
Okay, so you've staked out opposition to the spending cuts, and you've staked out opposition to the tax increases, the ongoing tax increases that Governor Brown wants. Okay, now...
No, I'm not opposing the spending cuts. What I'm saying is that the spending cuts are insufficient without bold reform. Okay. And that he has an opportunity now. This governor has more political capital now that he's going to have at any point in time. He's not spending it on bold reform. Unfortunately, he's going to wind up spending it on a big tax hike.
Can you, as the leader of the Republicans, the GOP chairman in California, are the Republicans going to block this thing?
Republicans are not going to sign on to a tax increase. We have every single Republican in our lower house is pledged to oppose a tax hike. This is one of the biggest tax hikes in state history. It's a mistake to move forward with it.
But you are now in the minority. You are the minority party in the state legislature in California. So you don't actually have the power. Even though you've got a solid voting against this budget, you don't have the power to block it completely.
It takes a two-thirds vote of the legislature to put a tax hike like this on the ballot. They would have to do that by March for a June special election. That requires some Republican support. And again, every Republican in the state assembly has pledged to oppose a tax hike.
So I'm taking this to say you're blocking this thing. It's not going to happen.
Well, it's going to be up to our individual legislators, but they've made a commitment to oppose a tax hike.
What do you make of this tax increase that Governor Brown has proposed, whereby he would tax corporations and corporate income, even though that corporation is not headquartered in California? That seems to me like a radical plan to tax every business that does any kind of business in California at all.
Well, politicians really like to raise taxes on people who can't vote them out of office. It's part of the reason why when you fly into an airport and you rent a car, you find all these fees on your car rental because it was politicians in that local jurisdiction who are taxing you, and you probably don't vote in that jurisdiction. So that's no surprise whatsoever. But what's really cynical about this is that the politicians in Sacramento 2 years ago promised that, well, we only need a temporary tax increase for a couple of years while we promise to get our act together, and then the tax increase will go away. Well, here we are 2 years later, and the same or similar group of politicians is proposing, well, we need these taxes for another 5 years. This is precisely why Americans have grown so cynical about government, and Republicans understand that when these tax hikes, either on corporations or individuals, go on the table, fundamental reform comes off the table, and that continues to compound this problem. Bold reform is needed in pensions and education.
Last one. If you don't get that, of course, you are the leader of the Republican Party in California, the GOP chairman in that state. Would you take the responsibility for pushing California to insolvency? Would you do it?
No, the responsibility for being pushed to insolvency lies with those politicians who are there right now who year after year go